The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is a complex and tragic situation. It is a story of intertwined histories, political tensions, and a struggle for identity. The two nations share deep cultural and religious ties. They have been both siblings and rivals throughout their history. This conflict has had a profound impact on the lives of millions. It has also sent shockwaves throughout the international community. This essay will delve into the key events of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We will explore the historical context. We will also examine the political factors and the human cost of this ongoing crisis. Understanding this conflict is crucial for anyone seeking to comprehend the current geopolitical landscape. The conflict has roots in the fall of the Soviet Union. It escalated with the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014. It further intensified with the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The conflict has led to a humanitarian crisis. It has also resulted in economic instability. The conflict has had a significant impact on international relations. To understand the current conflict, we must look back at the historical relationship between Ukraine and Russia. Both nations share roots in the East Slavic civilization. The territory that encompasses modern-day Ukraine has historically served as a bridge between Russia and Europe. In the 9th century, the Kievan Rus, a powerful East Slavic state, emerged. It encompassed parts of modern-day Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. The Mongols invaded and fragmented the Kievan Rus in the 13th century. This led to centuries of shifting borders and foreign influence over Ukrainian lands. Fast forward to the 20th century, Ukraine became part of the Soviet Union. This period saw both stability and hardship. The Holodomor, a man-made famine in the 1930s, devastated Ukraine. Despite hardships, Ukraine played a vital role in the Soviet Union. It was a major agricultural producer and an industrial powerhouse. It also housed a significant portion of the Soviet military-industrial complex. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 highlighted the shortcomings of the Soviet system. It further fueled Ukrainian desires for independence. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought about a new era for Ukraine. On August 24, 1991, Ukraine declared its independence. It pursued closer ties with the West. This move was met with suspicion by Russia. In 2013, protests erupted in Kiev's Independence Square, known as the Maidan protests. They were sparked by President Yanukovych's decision to abandon an EU agreement. The protests turned violent as government forces cracked down. In February 2014, Yanukovych fled to Russia. In March, Russian troops took control of Crimea. A referendum resulted in Crimea joining Russia. The international community condemned the annexation and imposed sanctions on Russia. Following the annexation of Crimea, tensions continued to simmer in eastern Ukraine, particularly in the Donbas region. This region, comprising the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, has a predominantly Russian-speaking population and strong historical and economic ties to Russia. In April 2014, armed groups with support from Russia seized government buildings in Donetsk and Luhansk. They proclaimed the independence of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic, respectively. Ukraine's government responded by launching a military operation against the separatists. This marked the beginning of the Donbas War, a conflict that would continue to simmer and escalate over the next 8 years. The Donbas War was characterized by fierce fighting, shelling, and a heavy toll on civilians. Russia denied direct military involvement, claiming that any Russian citizens fighting in Ukraine were volunteers. However, evidence suggested significant Russian military support for the separatists, including the provision of weapons, training, and even regular troops. Section 5. The Tragedy of MH17. On July 17, 2014, the world watched in horror as Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, was shot down over eastern Ukraine. All 298 people on board, including 80 children, perished in the tragedy. The downing of MH17 sent shockwaves across the globe and further escalated tensions surrounding the conflict in Ukraine. An international investigation concluded that MH17 was shot down by a Buk missile system, a sophisticated surface-to-air missile system fired from territory controlled by pro-Russian separatists. The investigation found that the missile system had been brought into Ukraine from Russia and was returned to Russia shortly after the downing of the aircraft. Russia denied any involvement in the downing of MH17, putting forward alternative theories that were widely disputed by international investigators. The tragedy of MH17 underscored the human cost of the conflict in Ukraine and the dangers of the escalating violence. It also highlighted the international dimensions of the conflict and the need for a peaceful resolution. Section 6. Fragile Hope, the Minsk Agreements. In September 2014, representatives from Ukraine, Russia, OSCE, Donetsk, and Luhansk signed the Minsk Protocol to end fighting in eastern Ukraine. It called for a ceasefire, withdrawal of heavy weapons, and constitutional reforms for greater autonomy in Donbas. However, the fighting continued. Minsk II, signed in February 2015, outlined a more detailed peace roadmap. Despite these agreements, sporadic fighting persisted. The Minsk agreements remained a fragile framework for managing the conflict. Section 7. The Path to Invasion, Russia's troop buildup. Throughout 2021, tensions between Russia and Ukraine escalated. Russia began a massive military buildup along its border with Ukraine. Satellite images and intelligence reports showed a significant deployment of troops, tanks, artillery, and other military equipment. This buildup raised alarm bells in the West. The United States and its NATO allies expressed deep concern about Russia's intentions and warned of severe consequences if Russia were to invade Ukraine. Diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation intensified. World leaders engaged in frantic negotiations with their Russian counterparts. Russia, however, denied any plans to invade Ukraine. It claimed that the troop movements were part of routine military exercises. It also issued a series of demands to the West, including a guarantee that Ukraine would never join NATO and a rollback of NATO's military presence in Eastern Europe. The West rejected these demands, asserting that NATO's open-door policy and the right of nations to choose their own alliances were non-negotiable. Section 8. February 2022, a turning point. On February 24, 2022, the world watched in disbelief as Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a special military operation in Ukraine. Russian forces launched a full-scale invasion of the country, targeting key cities including the capital, Kiev. The invasion marked a dramatic escalation of the conflict and a turning point in European security. Russian troops advanced on multiple fronts. They launched airstrikes and missile attacks on military and civilian targets throughout Ukraine. The invasion triggered international condemnation. In the face of the Russian onslaught, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed to defend his country. He rallied his people, urging them to resist the invasion. The Ukrainian military, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, put up fierce resistance. Section 9. The world responds, sanctions and support for Ukraine. The international community responded to Russia's invasion of Ukraine with outrage and swift action. The United States, the European Union, and their allies imposed unprecedented sanctions on Russia. These sanctions targeted Russian banks, businesses, and individuals, crippling the Russian economy. In a show of solidarity with Ukraine, countries around the world provided military, financial, and humanitarian aid to the embattled nation. The United States and its NATO allies supplied Ukraine with billions of dollars worth of weapons, including anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles, which proved crucial in slowing down the Russian advance. Millions of Ukrainians fled their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries. Poland, Romania, and other European nations opened their borders to Ukrainian refugees, providing them with food, shelter, and other forms of assistance. The conflict triggered a humanitarian crisis on a scale not seen in Europe since World War II. Section 10. A world changed, the global impact of the conflict. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has had far-reaching consequences. It has shaken the foundations of the international order. The conflict has had a profound impact on global energy markets. Russia is a major exporter of oil and natural gas. The conflict has led to a surge in energy prices, fueling inflation worldwide. The invasion has also raised concerns about food security. Both Russia and Ukraine are major agricultural producers, particularly of wheat. The conflict has disrupted global supply chains, leading to shortages and price hikes for food commodities. The conflict has also had a significant impact on international relations. It has led to a reassessment of security alliances. It has also resulted in a renewed focus on defense spending. The conflict has highlighted the importance of international cooperation in addressing global challenges. Section 11. Conclusion: the conflict's uncertain future. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is a tragedy for both nations. It is a stark reminder of the human cost of war and the fragility of peace. The conflict has had a devastating impact on Ukraine, resulting in widespread destruction, displacement, and loss of life. The outcome of the conflict remains uncertain. The fighting continues. The potential for further escalation remains high. A negotiated settlement seems elusive. The international community faces the daunting task of finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is a defining moment for the 21st century. It is a test of the international order. It is a challenge to our collective conscience. The conflict underscores the urgent need for diplomacy, dialogue, and a commitment to peace.